Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be making this little jar-shaped card using the Filled with Sweetness bundle from Stampin' Up. This is an online exclusive that's going to be on the website March 3rd, 2026. If you missed my video going over the details of this suite, it's called the Homemade Sweetness Suite Collection. I'm going to link that video. I go into detail about all the designer series paper, the stamps and dies, and the other embellishments that you can get with the entire suite, or you can purchase each thing separately. So I'll link that below in case you want to go back and watch that. Before we start on the process for part of the video for this card, I will show you just a few other cards that I created using the suite. I have this little On Your Birthday card. This is the sentiments from a different set, but the designer series paper and the ribbon is all pieces that you can get with the suite. I did a little bit of paper tearing so it looks like that cute jar designer series paper is kind of behind those layers. I used one of the other designer series paper that has bigger jars, cut those out and have them on some of this blue and white check paper. Kind of looks like maybe a shelf or, picnic table. And the last one, I used, again, some designer series paper, and I fussy cut out the various fruit. And then I used the coordinating two-tone cardstock that's in the collection. I put each strip onto a background piece of cardstock and used an embossing folder to emboss the whole thing, and then put the coordinating colors of fruit kind of in a rainbow pattern down that, again on that blue and white check paper. So those are three other cards that I made. So let's go ahead and get started on creating this card today. So the first thing I want to show you is in this die set, there is a die that will cut the shaped card. It's a big die. It has two halves of a jar, and then it scores the paper in between so that you can fold it. So that is what actually creates this jar-shaped card, which is really fun. It's just a really cute little detail. I wanted to make it look like kind of looked like there was glass, and I didn't want to just use acetate for a clear surface, so I used vellum. And we're going to do the stamping on the vellum first because that takes longer to dry. Anytime you stamp on vellum, because it's a little bit more of a slippery surface, it is going to stay wet longer unless we use a heat tool to help dry it. So first thing we're going to do is stamp on the vellum and then put that to the side and let it start to dry. Okay, so I have a piece of vellum here that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so the size of an A2 card front. That will be cut down a little bit later. And then I mounted my jar stamp onto a big acrylic block. And because I didn't want the lines of my jar to be really harsh, I wanted it to be, a little bit more realistic. It's not totally realistic, but a little more realistic. So I'm using Misty Moonlight to stamp the details of the jar onto this piece of vellum. So we'll just open up the ink pad, get this all inked up. And give it a press without wiggling because I don't want to smudge anything. Okay. And that just stamps so nice. You can see it's shiny, so I'm going to set that off to the side so it doesn't smudge. And then without re-inking my stamp, so whatever ink is left on this, I'm going to stamp that onto this designer series paper. That's going to be the layer that's behind here. That's going to help me in the next step, so I'll show you that when we get there. But again, I'm just going to take whatever's left as far as ink and kind of pick a spot, maybe just down in one of the corners here. Let's see. Let me go right here. And it can be close to the edge. I'm just kind of looking to see what fruit is going to show up then when I stamp here. I think that looks okay. Give that a good press. Okay. You can see that outline very well. Okay. Let me just get my stamp ink pad put away, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, I'm going to kind of tell you my reasoning behind what I'm doing here. So when we cut out the base of our card, it's going to leave a little bit of a border all the way around the jar where it's stamped, where the edge of the jar is stamped. So both the white layer and that vellum layer. If I use the die to cut out this layer that goes underneath, it's actually going to look like I have fruit sticking out from the edge of the jar all the way around, and I don't want to see that. So I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm going to cut right on the line, right on that stamped line, not inside of it, not outside of it. I'm going to try to stay right on it all the way around, and then that will line up with the edge of the jar, so that hopefully we don't have fruit sticking out the sides of the jar at all. It'll just line up really nicely once we go to put all of our layers together. So I'm going to go ahead and get this cut out. All right, and as you can see, that's really easy to cut out, and I wouldn't have had to be so detailed with the top part because we are going to cover that up, but I figured while I was at it, I might as well do a nice job. And then while I have my scissors out, I'm going to fussy cut just a few of the pieces of fruit. I thought it would be cute just to have some on the front, just for some added embellishment. And I do want to point out this peach that I used here actually was from an edge. So this is kind of a good way to use some of those little edge pieces that are always like, well, what do I do with it? It's not a full piece of fruit. I cut one of these and then just tucked it behind the raspberries here. So we'll probably go ahead and use that one, or maybe even this little one here. That should be okay too. So I'll get a few pieces of fruit cut out to use as our embellishment. Okay, so there's our little pieces of fruit, and then we'll see once we actually go to put those on the front, you know, if I want a little bigger one or maybe an additional one, I can always cut more later, but we'll start with these. The next thing I'm going to do is bring my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine over, and we're going to die cut a few pieces. So this piece that looks like the fabric over the top of the jar, we'll die cut that out of that designer series paper. And then this piece that looks like a string and the bow and this little tag, we'll die cut all of those out of some white cardstock, as well as the whole base of our card. We'll get that cut out now as well. Okay, so we're going to cut the base of our card. I just put a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 cardstock. I cut an 8.5 by 11 piece in half, and let me just show you that before I cut it. So this very well fits on there with some room to spare. Just putting that on the platform. Put the top plate on. And you're going to hear cracking as it goes through. Now we can keep this for the tag. And here is that little jar-shaped card. And can see there's that scored line right down the middle where you can just fold it right in half. So really cute. We'll set that aside, and then let's cut out that fabric piece. And I'm using this blue and white checked piece of designer series paper, and here's the die that cuts out the piece that looks like the fabric. So we'll just put that down. And there's our little fabric topper. All right, and then I have some white cardstock here, and I'm going to be cutting this piece that looks like the strings that go around the fabric top, and this little bow. I do want to point out that the set comes with this little tag die. It's really cute, but to change things up, I'm actually going to grab the die out of the Endless Love. This was the Valentine set that just came out. I'm actually going to be cutting this die out. It's a little bit smaller, this tag I should say. It's a little bit smaller, and I wanted to just use a little shorter sentiment. So let's just add some variety and to use some of our other stamp sets and dies. I went ahead and pulled this one out. So I'm going to put that on here, and we'll cut all 3 of these at once. There's the tag, ribbon, and bow that we just die cut. Now this Filled with Sweetness stamp set does come with some sentiments, but I'm going to use one from a different set. I'll show you that in just a second. I am going to use this little heart from the set though on our tag. So I'll show you that in a minute when I get that stamped. But I'm going to use the Fragrant Layers stamp set and just this little hello. I wanted something just a little bit more generic. I thought about using just a note, but I thought hello would be cute, and it fits nicely on this little tag from that Valentine set. So to stamp the hello, I'm going to use my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I find that this ink stamps sentiments really nice. It's a nice crisp black. Okay. And then I want to add that little heart because one of the colors in this collection is Strawberry Slush. That's the color I'm going to use to stamp the heart. Okay, our little tag is ready. All right, and because I really still want that vellum to have a chance to continue to dry, I'm going to start assembling a couple of the other pieces and try to do that piece last. So I think let's go ahead and decorate up our little fabric topper. We can go ahead and glue our string and bow onto it. And I just like to use some liquid glue. I get these bottles, they come empty, and I fill them with kind of whatever glue I have on hand. So whether it be Tombow or Barely Art glue, or there's like an artist's glue or something like that from scrapbook.com I've used. I'm really not too picky usually, and I just put it in this because it has a really nice fine nozzle, and it makes it easy to glue smaller die cuts. So just kind of take your time. I'm getting a few bigger spots on it. Sometimes it doesn't come out as fast. Sometimes it's flows a little bit nicer. Okay, and I'll just glue that right to the front here. Okay, and I think I'm going to go ahead and use a glue dot. So I use these mini glue dots from Stampin' Up, and I'm gonna do a couple. I'm gonna do one behind the tag and kind of stick that right to where the string looks like it's gathered, because that's where our bow goes. And I'm gonna put one behind the bow also. And you can always kind of, if the glue dot is bigger than your die cut, you can kind of press it together almost like into a little wad and then press that down where you want it. There we go. So our little jar lid area is ready. Then I think we can get our fruit attached to the front of the card. For that, I'm just going to use a tape runner. Right now I'm using this Creative Memories one. I'm out of my Stampin' Up tape runner, but of course any tape runner will do. You can even glue this to the front if you'd like. So however you like to adhere things. Oh, and of course I went over the edge. All right, and because we trim this down, it does make it pretty easy to get it centered. We're not trying to line the edges up you know, edge to edge, we have a little bit of a border. And all right, there we go. The last thing then is to put our vellum on the front. So I'm going to make sure that's dry before we do that. All right, I could see just a couple little shiny spots still of the ink, so I did use a heat tool and just finish drying this so that hopefully it won't smudge when we do the rest of our steps here. So what I'm going to do off camera is go run this through my die cutting machine. This die is going to just fit right over our stamped image like this. I'll use a little bit of low-tack tape to hold this in place. All right, and since this is designed to just score that middle line, it doesn't actually cut. We will have to cut that part. Show you up close here. This whole piece here needs to be trimmed off. So you can either use a paper trimmer or just use a scissors. It did score it, so I can see where that line is. So I'm just going to use my scissors and just go straight down. It's a nice straight line, so it makes it pretty easy. Okay. And then what I want to do is use a little bit of liquid glue and glue this right to the front of that fruit piece. And because I stamped the jar onto the fruit piece, so one, so that we could trim it out so we didn't have the edges hanging over, but another so I could really get this lined up nicely. These stamped detail lines should all line up with that piece behind. So whenever you're going to glue a piece of vellum, just be very careful. It's nice that we have these stamped lines to follow, so it will hide the glue. So I'm going to just try to take my time here and not get too much glue on the back of this. And then I'll point out, because this top part is going to be covered by the fabric piece, I'm going to put a little bit more up here just to really help hold this whole thing in place. Okay. And I'm starting at the bottom, making sure our lines are all lined up. Good. And then I'm going to use that big stamp block and just put it right on top and let that dry for a bit. All right, and that seems to be pretty dry, so we are going to go ahead and finish up this card. Now on the lid piece, this fabric piece, I did put a few dimensionals back behind here just so it kind of looks like the fabric sticking out. I didn't put them on these two little end pieces because those are going to stick off the sides once this is closed, and I didn't want it sticking just out, not stuck to anything. And then I am going to put some tape runner across the top part here. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and just put that right on here. It might stick up a little bit from the jar, which is okay. Peel off the backing of that one. There. All right. And we are just about done. But the last thing that I wanted to do was put these extra little fruit pieces on the outside. So let's see here. I think I will grab my dimensionals and pop up my strawberry. I'll have that just right down here. And then remember, this peach, I have just a little piece. So I'm going to put that flat, but kind of try to tuck it under. I'll have that coming up just a little bit because I'm also going to just pop up these blueberries right beside it. And I think I'll add a little adhesive to that one. Okay, let's see here. There we go, that looks cute. And there is our cute little jar-shaped card made with the Filled with Sweetness stamp set and bundle, the Homemade Sweetness Sweet Collection from Stampin' Up. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.